All right. Hello, everyone. This is Courtney Rollins with the Life and Transitions Experts podcast, here with some more content. Actually, here with a very special piece of content today. I'm here with a special guest, Erica Xavier-Beauvoir. Am I saying your name correctly?
Well, you completely jacked that up, but it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, please help me out there.
It's
How do you say?
It's Erica Javier-Beauvoir.
Oh, Javier Beauvoir. I apologize. That's one of the questions I should
Yeah,
have
no
asked before we jumped
worries.
on. Javier Beauvoir. And I think we met actually down at the Durham Senior Center. Um,
Yes, yes, we did.
yes, and I was catching the tail end of your presentation. You were sharing, I'll let you explain what you do, but you were sharing some of your work as an end of life doula, which sounds so
Hmm.
fascinating. Right before we got into an intense hour of bingo with the participants there, so that was pretty
Whew.
cool. But yeah, yeah, but yeah, please share the Life and Transitions Expert podcast or YouTube channel with folks who may be coming for the first time. This is a space where we talk about big transitions in life, and one of those is, passing away. I often help people who are going through the probate process,
Hmm.
dealing with the states, and also trying to bring people like you on who are, entrenched in that space to help out. So, folks, hope this is helpful to you all because I'm very fascinated. So, yeah, can you tell us who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so again, Erica Javier-Beauvoir here. Uh, I am 9 to 5 a psychic medium professional. I also do death ritual work, death doula work. I'm also a green natural burial activist, and that's how I met you, Courtney, was doing a lot of conversations around town, and one was at the senior center in reference to green natural burial options. So a lot of folks don't know about it. Been doing this work for several years, usually with psychic mediumship. It's something that's passed down from mothers, grandmothers, paternal side as well. You know, grandma had dreams of fish, so somebody's pregnant. But we never really conceptualized what that really meant. So I decided to say yes and surrender to doing it full time. So that's in a nutshell what I do.
Wow, wow, that is a lot there. So your
Yeah.
mothers and folks in that space were doing similar work, but didn't have it as I guess concretized or going out as
Yeah,
much. Or what
yeah.
did it look like for them?
When you I'm sure a lot of folks, especially in the diaspora, we hear things in our families around dreams, around ancestor coming back and saying hello, or just these little minor things that occur, but we don't put a lot of emphasis on it. We just think of it as normal day-to-day things,
Hmm.
or it gets demonized. um, so my mother, she has gifts of dreams and is able to hear, see, feel spirit. My grandmother as well. I would catch my grandmother like cleaning, and she's talking. She's having a full conversation. So I go and I was like, "You talking to me?" She's like, "No, I'm not talking to you. You better get your behind out there because this ain't got nothing to do with you, right?"
Wow.
But what she was doing is she was communicating with spirit. So on the matriarchal side, it was all there, but I was raised Southern Baptist AME, and it molded a lot of how I engage with spirit now, which got me into death doula work and death rituals. Because if I can hear what the ancestors are asking and requesting, then I make it come true. So that's how I got into death doula work.
So the people that you work with, how are these are folks more have an affinity towards acumen for spirituality and for that, or how are you introduced to most of the people that you get to serve and work with?
Usually, the folks that come to me, it's word of mouth. So it's them knowing that I'm a spiritualist, them knowing that I professionally do psychic medium work, It's them knowing that I make sure that I create space for spirit in the conversation. If we decide to do any type of funeral redos or rituals around ancestors or people that have passed on, that I center what they have to say. So I stay pretty busy with the folks that are just word of mouth. And sometimes folks gravitate because they, see me on social media or something like that, and then they want to do some sort of work together. But usually it's word of mouth. And I tend to just create a space that feels indigenous, that feels decolonized, that feels very earthy, and taking into consideration how our ancestors used to do it. And I think a lot of people appreciate that.
How did you merge, or uh, you because when I spoke to you, or when I reached out, I saw that you were working with Durham,
Yes.
the county, and so an institution like the government, which you said decolonized, but has so much
Uh-huh.
history in the history that it has. How does that I guess marriage or partnership what does that look like? How did you get in part of that? If that makes sense.
So, no, it does. There was a position through a fellowship that was focused on green natural burials and land sustainability. And that particular fellowship was housed in the city of Durham. So I put in for the fellowship because it's in alignment with the type of work that I do. A lot of earth work, making sure that we take care of and tend to the earth. So I put in for that position, and it was working with the city of Durham. And what I told the city of Durham right off the bat is I bring my whole self with me. You don't get a piece of me. You don't get the executive consultant piece. You get the executive consultant, the healer, the psychic medium. I'm going to not talk to you right now because I have to go to the cemetery and talk to them first. And that's how I engaged for a year, as well as doing a lot of community engagement, a lot of surveys, a lot of qualitative research. So having that balance of like program management, community engagement, outreach, creating different events for folks to learn about um, green natural burials, and marrying it with the concept of you have this historically Black cemetery, which is Beechwood, and this historically white cemetery, Maplewood, and creating a reparation through focused engagement was the work that I said that I was going to do. And it fueled the city council to eventually pass the policy to make their cemeteries, their city cemeteries, green natural burial friendly. So I had to go in, look through the law, look through the policy, see what I need to take out, what I need to add. So now folks in Durham do have the option of green natural burials.
Can you say more about we might have so many places I want to go, but,
Oh yeah, yeah.
with
I
that
mean, I'm
there.
here for the
More
ride. Here for
about
the ride.
more about the green natural burials, and what is that, and why why is it something we all should be thinking about or know about?
Yeah. So, green natural burials is, in short, minimizing the harm to Mother Earth in our transition. And the thought process is to make sure that Earth is better than what we found it and better for our future generations to come. There are some pieces of traditional burials that's not necessarily environmentally friendly, which includes embalming fluid. So with green natural burials, there's no embalming fluid. And if you do decide to have some sort of preservation, it has to be like the like a environmentally friendly fluid, and usually that's like honey, and there's kind of like a mixture that they have. There's no cement vault that you put the casket in, and the casket itself has to be biodegradable. And what we're doing, once we take away the vault, we take away the embalming fluid, we take away the steel casket, and we're just shrouding, or we're putting the body in a beautiful like wicker casket, and we're returning it to earth. Now, instead of that land just being a cemetery land that's kind of desolate, because you have traces of metal, you have
Hmm.
traces of toxins in that land. Now that land can be regenerated. It could be used for other things in the future, opposed to it being toxic soil. So that's the concept, is if we're thinking about land sustainability and moving forward in sustainability efforts, we should be thinking about our funeral practices as well. And I can tell you, from being in a Black family, I understand what it means to have a funeral that's impeccable. But I also know, as a death doula, as somebody that is in the green natural burial space, you can have a down home, beautiful, lavish green natural burial, and it gives the same effect, and you are doing limited harm to the land in the process.
Wow. Yeah, that makes so much sense when you're thinking about the impact on the earth and the footprint that's left behind. I wonder, it seems like quite often, ceremonies for transitions are for the living, but I, well, there's two ways I want to go here. One, for in your connection and conversations with, on that spiritual side with spirits, have
Mm-hmm.
you felt or noticed or a difference between like that closing that circle for that transition for the person who's passed away as opposed to the more traditional route of being in a box and having the impact it has on the earth. And I don't know if that's even something that's even able to speak into or speak to, but
I could
yeah,
definitely speak into that.
yeah.
So you have Earth, which is a living, breathing thing. So Earth itself can get pissed. And we've seen Earth get
Oh,
pissed.
wow.
What does that look like? That looks like earthquakes. That looks like land that is completely washed over. That looks like uncontrollable tornadoes and hurricanes. We know when Earth is pissed. Um, so if we are being intentional with our transitions, we are creating harmony and peace with our ancestors, those that are transitioning, and Earth simultaneously. We're saying, we value you, Earth. We value you enough to not harm you in our transition.
All right.
Right.
That's right.
So going to a sanctuary that is green natural burial, 100% green natural burial. Going to a sanctuary, there's one in that I know of, that I've been to in Hillsborough, called Blue Stem.
Mm,
I I want people to go to Blue Stem Sanctuary and walk around and tell me how you feel,
mm,
and then tell me how you feel walking around Beechwood.
wow.
You're going to feel energetically
Mm,
different. And that is Earth harmonizing with what is going on in Earth. I don't have to necessarily, spirit, yes, spirit will say, I need to be more mindful. I can get to you closer with no barriers. If I just decide to do a green natural burial, I can get to you quicker. If I put my feet on the ground, my bare feet on the ground of a green natural burial, I can hear crystal clear what's going on.
wow.
With a traditional cemetery, I can hear, but it has to be quiet, because there's so many barriers between me and the spirit.
Wow. That's pretty powerful right there. So, like, for many folks, because this is a conversation a lot of people, are shed away from or are afraid
Oh
of.
yeah.
As I've come into working with folks in probate and estate and thinking about my own inevitable, I found it more and more empowering, and
Hmm.
like that I get to have, well, I don't want to say control, but at least I get to dictate in some way the legacy that I leave behind in this period, in this stage of my life and all. How have you helped? Well, there's a couple of ways I want to go, but how do you not have that traditional, like not traditional, but the like you're talking about walking into spaces and feeling and hearing people
Yes.
who have transitioned or voice of the transition. How does that not scare you, for lack of a better word? I'm trying,
Oh, it took years.
yeah.
Well, first there's a difference between, and most pastors or folks that are in the spiritual community, they'll tell you there are people are that have a calling, they want to do
Mhm.
something, and there are people that are chosen. So I was chosen, and I didn't want to do it.
Wow.
Right? So I was like, "No, no, I'm just gonna go ahead and keep going over here," and I was a police officer for 14 years.
Oh wow.
So I was doing a lot of, like, community engagement work, but what happened was spirit started to interfere with my work, and my powers started to come on and activate in the middle of work, and I realized I had to be in a space of, like, decision making, because I couldn't continue as a police officer, go to a house, see two people arguing, a husband and wife arguing, but it's their ancestors that I see that are arguing, and that's the root why they're arguing, but I can't
Mm.
tell them that that's the root why they're arguing because I'm not supposed to. And I realized I had to go. So I went through a moment of being afraid. I went through a moment of being scared of what I was being called to do at that moment. So I had a decision, like most people. You either surrender or you don't, and you keep going down this path that you don't know where it's going to take you, just like you don't know what's going to happen on this path. What I realized that people in my family always said no. They said, I don't want to talk about, I don't want the gifts, or I don't want to talk about, I don't want it to be my go-to thing. I decided to say yes. And once I said yes, they started to ease up on me and just give me a little bit at a time so I can learn the ins and outs,
You said
how
they.
to pick, yeah, yeah, guides,
Yeah,
ancestors,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Ancestors that had these gifts prior to me, having these conversations, hearing them saying, this is what you do, this is how you move, this is how you navigate dream space in a conscious way. And
Mm.
after years of doing that work, I gained confidence and I became unafraid.
Yeah, through the work, putting it in, study and
Yeah.
practice, gains the faith. Amen. Well, so when someone is making a decision, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, you quite often work with people who and see that they're about to transition, right?
Yes.
Not just. What are some of the do you what are some of the practical like documents or things that
Hmm.
you've seen people need to utilize so that they can have their wishes at least fulfilled or at least have on this side the legally supported.
Okay. There's a couple of tiers here. So if you don't want to go the lawyer route, you can get something notarized that has your wishes on it. You can
Mm,
have it drafted up, print it out, get it notarized, and that be it if you don't want to go the full protection route. But something needs to be in writing, especially if you have very distinct things that you want to accomplish in your transition. Remember, I tell people this all the time. Your transition is your final protest.
mm, mm,
It's your
mm,
final protest. It is how you are going to tell supremacy how you're going to exit, tell
mm,
people that told you that you were not enough going to, this is your final protest.
Mm,
So if you want something specific with your final protest, you need to have it in writing. Now, the best way to have protection would be going through a lawyer and a trust.
mm-hmm.
Now, even if you decide to get married or you're partnered, that trust, that information in that trust trumps whatever other things people want to try to do.
Absolutely.
It trumps it. So if you want that type of protection, you go through a lawyer and you place that document in a trust.
I'm so glad you're saying that because so many people, when they hear trust, I'm assuming a lot of people think of, big, wealthy, monopoly wearing guys,
Uh
but
huh.
I think you have to have some asset. I'm like, your biggest asset is yourself. You can put your
Yes.
wishes, you are your estate. So having a trust, I feel like, is almost for every single person. And I will also say that while being alive, people may want to think about things like health directives or living wills because
Mm-hmm.
you could become incapacitated, and if you have wishes based on when you're still here, you can have that legally supported as well, and it doesn't cost much of anything. You can write it just as you're saying, write it down and have it, notarized, and as long as it's verifiable that it's a notary, it
Yeah.
protects you in a lot of ways. That when I'm hearing you talk, I think about what was that book, Alice Walker, In Search of My Mother's Garden, and some of the gifts and tools that particularly brown and black folks have, and
Mm-hmm.
women in general, that haven't been as elevated in mainstream main spaces. Have you
Yeah.
had to combat that at all? I know you were saying how you had to tell the county or the city that, hey, this is there's no
Mm-hmm.
compartmentalize, you bring the whole me. But are there other places or ways that you've had to combat that narrative that seems to be dominant?
At this point, it's not combating. At this point, it's just moving the way that I need to move. I no longer am in this space to combat and play
I
this
dig that.
game with you, right? It's this
Yeah.
is me. I'm a psychic medium professional. I can look into your past, present, future, up, down, forward. I could tell you about yourself and I could read yourself. I can do all those things, right? Um, and this is what my ancestors have me doing, right?
Hey.
And if you rock with it and you're intrigued, then we can have conversations. If my light rattle your shadows, then you will exit stage left.
Hey,
And
that's
my
dope.
ancestors have told me, they said, the way that you move, we need you to move out loud. There's no more
Mm,
hiding, right? The women that have been a part of my ancestral line that had to hide their gifts, had to hide their magic, the grandmas that did all kinds of things to keep their family alive and to keep future generations developing, they're no longer in a space of hiding. Those uncles that were doing work to protect, they're no longer in a space of hiding. Therefore, when I do my work, I'm no longer in a space of hiding. Because
hey,
that was
yeah.
the contract that I have with my ancestors, with my guides, those that walk with me. I no longer can be in this space of just doing it over here. Somebody call me, do a reading, and not let people know who I am. No, you're going to know who I am. You're going to know what I do. Um, and if you're cool with it, we'll continue to move community and elevate community, to get more people to activate their light too, because we need more people to activate their light.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Oh, that's wonderful. So like even on the side, if someone approaches you, what I can imagine it'd be a little different, but what does the compensation side looks like if someone was thinking, okay, how much is this going to I don't even know if the word cost me, how much I need to invest for this type of support.
It I do it sliding scale, because I want to be available for the elderly who are on fixed incomes, and can't necessarily provide assistance through their insurance, which is another thing that everyone should have, is some sort of insurance policy.
So not
Uh,
GoFundMe. Don't rely.
yeah, the GoFundMe is not the new insurance policy. You should have some sort of the 20-year. They're usually the cheapest, so you just get something um, to sustain you. The thing that I tell people about insurance is this is what wealthy people use to generate wealth. If you didn't know.
Right.
So if you're able to get a green natural burial, which is usually cheaper, at least a couple of thousand, right? You get a green natural burial,
Less
maybe
expensive.
depending,
Okay.
yeah, it's less expensive. So depending on
Mhm.
your insurance policy, you may be able to compensate me, or I put you on a sliding scale. It just depends. Because death doula work isn't a certified um, practice per se. It is it doesn't have any kind of like certification. So there are people that have gotten training. They're part of alliances of end of life doulaships, but there isn't a certification necessarily for it, or trainings that you have to do. So you get this green natural burial. You save. I don't know. You could save anywhere from 500 to a couple of thousand, depending on what casket you wanted to get. Um, and let's say you take that money that you saved and your family puts it towards a long-term life insurance policy, and they pay the payments. Let's say usually those insurance policies, they say you have to pay for 2 years until you're able to take out a loan
Against
on
this
your
loan.
insurance
Hmm.
policy.
Hmm.
And let's say those descendants then decide to take out a loan and build a business, a restaurant, or buy land. You have now created generational wealth based off of you saving money on a green natural burial and then utilizing that money for a long-term life insurance policy.
That is
And
powerful.
we don't think about that, right?
Yeah. What's so great about the trust is that you can even dictate, and I'm sure as you already know, but you can dictate how your family members can use that. So if my nephew or cousin wants a loan for that business or for education, if I have in a stipulation that he has to have a policy on him, if for whatever reason he's not able to pay that back, when he inevitably passes away, that's going to replenish the trust and replenish the loan. There's one great resource that I was learning a lot from was what would the Rockefellers do? And just as you
Mm-hmm.
said, this is exactly how many of the wealthy utilize insurance, utilize the tools that we have already readily available to us to be able to generate, secure, protect, and sustain wealth. That that's powerful. Being able to take something that's going to harmonize with the earth and support your generations to come, and
Mm-hmm.
be done in a way that, like you said, you leave your last protest and your
That's my
legacy behind.
protest,
That is,
right? My
yeah,
protest is we saved a bunch of money on how
definitely.
I decided to transition, and now my children and my children's children, we can have conversations because now they have money that they could put into a long-term life insurance, and then they can create a business or buy land with it. And now I have placed some power in the hands of my descendants, which we normally don't do. What happens is we end up getting frustrated in the funeral process because everybody has this is what uncle so and so, this is what auntie so and
Mm.
so, when you could just write it out and then nobody has to argue. Write it
And you
out.
all,
This is what you want.
and I hope if someone does catch this or at this, that you've heard that she didn't say a will in a last will and testament. Those are strong and those are part of your estate plan, but you need something stronger than that, a trust or something, because a will have to
Yes.
go through probate. It is public.
Yes.
It is does take a long time, and it is it's a painful process. It's like having a civil litigation against your own family after you pass.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to utilize trust is oh, and insurance is so powerful. Is that part of your conversation when you come in and consult with folks?
Yeah, I have
That's
conversations. I
awesome.
want to know,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to know if you have insurance. I want to know if you have written down your, usually if they're coming to a death doula, they have a lot of these things already
Mm,
written out.
great.
Or they're asking for suggestions, right? So if, for instance, there was a client that I had in North Carolina, and they wanted to know who to go to for handmade wicker caskets that are absolutely beautiful. I said, I know the person that does it by hand. It is her hand only. And that is Moss and Thistle Farm. And she hand weaves caskets and they're gorgeous. I said, that is who you go to for that particular service. And we're able to write down the things, the links, and how much each thing costs. So we can have a plan, and I know exactly what they want. The reason why I got to green burial activism was there was a client that asked for it. I went to the cemetery that they wanted to get buried in to ask. They said that we don't do it. You can't get a green natural burial here. You have to have a vault, which then made me have to do all this research to figure out where this person could get the service that they needed. Um, and it was frustrating. It was frustrating because the simple, just wanting to go back simply and beautifully was a hassle. And nobody had information to give this person. So I had to do the research. And that's what like created this lane for making sure that people of color specifically know that you do have an option in between fire cremation and traditional burials. You have green natural burial, and guess what? You also have cremation by water,
Mm,
which is something that you can get done in North Carolina.
cremation by
It
water. I've never
Yeah,
heard of
it's
that. Yeah.
called aquamation, and there's a place called
Mm,
Innswell in North Carolina, about
mm,
15-20 minutes away from Durham, where they have an aquamation facility. And they're great people. And the reason why he started his aquamation business was because of the death of his family member. So there are people that are trying to change the game here and let people know there are different options out there.
I'm so glad that you are one of. I hate that or that you had to go through that struggle, but it seems like it's deep in your tool belt and your ability to help and serve people more. Yeah, yeah. I think that people hopefully get the message and know that like being aware of and preparing for your transition gives you the permission to live. You don't have to wait until it's inevitable or until it's right around the corner. Besides, like I said, we don't know our tomorrows or our next hour or our next day,
Mhm.
anyways. Well, two questions I have for you as we wrap up is well, one, if someone like you mentioned earlier, if your light, if it casts those shadows, but also if it calls your own someone else's light, what like words of encouragement or ways or suggestions you have for someone who's been listening to more and more themselves and the ancestors and maybe not sure how or where to take that? Any suggestion for folks who are like maybe at some of those I don't know, crossroads when it comes to
Mhm.
recognizing their gifts or voices?
Crossroads and states of confusion are the most beautiful place for spirit to show up. It's the discomfort and the knowing that there's something more out there for you that will lead to them saying, "You're right. There is more out there for you, and we're going to show you." So don't be afraid of the confusion. Don't be afraid of feeling lost. When you feel lost, you're right where you're supposed to be.
Mm, mm.
in that moment, right? They talk about this moment, and when you think about it, they talk about it in almost every religious practice. This moment of like hunkering down, and I don't know how this is going to happen, and you're in this space, and then all of a sudden something miraculous happens. Now, miraculous in this particular instance could look like you start to feel things. Your dreams get a bit more vivid, and people are specifically talking to you in the dreams. But that moment, and when you sit in that moment and say, I know I'm going to get direction, I can be confident in this moment. I know this moment is a great moment. Um, that is the most powerful place you can be in your spiritual elevation.
Oh, more powerful, powerful. How can people? What's the best way for people to get a hold of you to maybe work with your services or just get a hold of you if they wanted to just reach out?
Yeah, so I have a couple of social media things. There's Earthing Our Funerals, which is an Instagram. That is the handle at Earthing Our Funerals. That's where you can see a lot of the green natural burial information. If you want more personal psychic medium professional information, then you go to my personal Instagram, which is at the spiritual general. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, the spiritual general, and there's a lot of posts around mediumship, uh, mediumship being abolitionist work, um, and
Mm,
also um, how to kind of like embark and embody love in a form that doesn't feel controlled, right? Especially in a place in a society where everything needs to be controlled and in a place. I move from a space with spirit saying everything is fluid. There
mm,
is no control because you don't have it. You have
mm.
destiny, is what you have. You don't have control. So a lot of that, those personal downloads that come in from spirit, I share on my personal page. I do have a website. If you, it's ericaxavier-beauvoir.com. There's a email, a contact space. So if you want to send me an email, that is also a way to contact me.
I'm gonna make sure they're all up. I just misspelled that last one, so I'm gonna make sure they're all in in the show notes. I don't think this thread travels when I do switch it over, so I'll make sure that it's all in the thread. But Eric, I really appreciate it. I learned a lot. Uh, I may have to ask a few more questions later on down the road, but
Yeah,
I do want to be my time in. Uh, oh, especially when it comes to reparations and ancestors of all races and how that reconciliation is taking place. Because I know there's a lot of
it is.
reconciliation that has to. I'm sure there's a lot of loud
It's
noises
happening
on the other
now.
side.
It's happening
Mm,
now. My white ancestors,
right,
they come by. We had some fights at the beginning. We had
right.
some moments where we had to sit up and like, look, this is how you cannot talk to me in this house, because one of my great grandfathers was a slave owner, was the
Right,
slave owner of my ancestor.
right.
So there are ways to navigate that relationship and to bring it in, because you don't want to shun it out, because that person, regardless of how they were crappy here on the physical
Yeah.
realm, they also come with power themselves. So if you can
Mhm.
come to an agreement and have conversations of apologies and how you can show up in your reparation on the other side, and bring all of those Greek and all those other deities and power to me, then you have a space in my ancestor altar.
Ooh, yeah, that's yeah. The story
It gets
continues. That's
intense. It gets
powerful.
intense.
That was yeah. That was, wow, that's powerful. Well, I thank you so much. I will, as soon as we wrap this up, I'm going to send you all the links and all that good stuff. But folks, would love for you to reach out. And if you have any questions, at Earthling Our Funerals, uh, at Earthling Our Funerals, Twitter,
Earthing.
Earthing, I'm sorry, Earthing Our
Yeah, yeah.
Funerals, just like I told you earlier, I apologize, at the Spiritual General Instagram page
Hmm.
and ericaxavier-beauvoir.com. I'll put them all in the show notes. Thank you for your time. We'd love to like and subscribe. And if you have any other topics or conversations you all want to cover, please reach out. I'd love to try my best to cover them. But until then, it's Life and Transitions Experts. Let your light shine.